Hello.
And I'm at, and yeah, we'll call the meeting to order at 6:02. We have
Hello.
4 out of 5 members at this point, and maybe Pam will still join us.
And Judson, there's a button at the bottom that you have to manually hit for you to transmit your video if you want.
Looks like he did it. Hi, Judson.
Hello.
There he is.
Very
right.
good.
Looking like a DJ.
We're making progress. Okay, so we've got a full agenda, so let's get started. So we just got a couple of hours ago, I guess, we got the minutes from Judson. And I appreciate you doing that, Judson, especially because you weren't even there. So you were doing it straight off the video, I guess, with the first time exposure to it. I think it's a little bit too sparse this time. And so we probably need to beef it up a little bit. If you're willing to go back into it and do that, you could do that. Otherwise, maybe Allison or I could take a crack at it. I don't know if you're interested, Allison. Otherwise, I'll try to work on that.
I just need, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I just need to know how, if you could give me one example on what you mean about sparse.
Yeah, okay.
I'll go back at it.
Okay, I appreciate that. So let me look here. Well, it's just it's a little hard to get the context of what. Somebody needs to be on mute, maybe. Well, everybody is on mute. Okay.
And Judson, when you talk, there's a mute button too. You can hit, and it'll mute your audio.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me see if I can characterize an example. Well, let's see. The very first thing was about the status of the zoning changes in 2072. So you made reference to the fact that there, I presumably had made, I don't remember what I said exactly, but I must have made reference to the October 27th Planning Commission meeting that was going to be happening and the November 10th meeting, but it's hard to tell that that's what's actually coming up. And then there's a comment that to do vision and then complete a sub-area plan and a professional to be used. I mean, it's hard to tell what we were really saying. I think it would probably more likely be something along the lines of our proposed changes are going to be before the Planning Commission on October 27th, and then possibly considered at the Whatcom County Council meeting on November 10th. And then that I had mentioned that there was talk at the meetings, and also we have also talked about doing further changes and more comprehensive changes by looking at the vision for the community and then making changes to the sub-area plan and then coming down to making necessary changes to 2072 that are consistent with all that. And that it might be appropriate to get outside help for that from the county, from the Port Authority, or from wherever, those type of things. So it's just that paragraph is very tight as it is right now, and it's hard to know what really things. I'm not sure that helps, Judson.
Yeah, it will. I'll make sure I clear it with you and get it right.
Okay, and don't spend hours and hours if it's not working out. I mean, let me know before you spend hours and hours, because then we can try to figure out some way to make it go, to work out better. But we'll take another crack at that. That's great. I appreciate it, Judson.
Thank you. Okay,
so the next thing on the agenda is actually public comment. Let me go back to the Zoom. Oh, sorry, there's someone who wants to come in. That's always a problem with this process. Okay, so we're at the public comment period. We'll limit people to 3 minutes so we don't get carried away, but I don't exactly know how to recognize anybody first. Tom was the first one on the call, so I could start with him, I guess. If this is a good time.
If you could, you can go to Grant or anyone. I just need a few minutes.
Okay, I'll come back to you at the end. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. And Grant, anything you wanted to add to public comment?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's two things. I've known if you guys have caught in the not necessarily the paper lately, but no, I guess y'all would understand the gentleman who brought up at council about the Canadian annexation,
Oh.
supporting.
John Lesau.
Sorry.
John Lesau.
Okay, so you all are familiar, and Steve, you guys are familiar with it as an issue, right? To take a comment up to the executive.
Yeah, he. I don't know what you mean by that, but he really vetted his idea quite a bit here in town and at the county council, and I'm not too sure where else.
Okay, I've only caught up with it in the paper, and then there was a small like independent journal documentary that was up on YouTube the last couple of days, and so there's two reasons why I ask about it. So when gosh, it was before COVID happened. Folks at PRIBC, Brian Calder, they had our new executive, Mr. Sadhu, gave us a few minutes of his time when he was over here speaking to your group and everybody else. And as I understood it, Mr. Sadhu at the time and Tyler, his aide there, were open to the idea of continuing discussion on how to do and organize a plebiscite, some sort of way to beef up our process here and our community governance on the point. And we talked about incorporation. We understand there's quite a bit of difficulties to it, but as I understood it, Mr. Sadhu had a path forward that he thought that there was a mechanism where we could have a plebiscite here in Point Roberts that would include as many people as were necessary to statutorily it could work basically. And he just wanted PRIBC and some other folks to get a list of folks together to take it to, I don't know if it was a ballot measure, whatever else, but he was open to the idea. He thought that it would help us increase the public perception of community engagement and sort of direct democracy here on the point, give us a better avenue where we could say there's X number of people, and because we've reached this threshold, we could, I don't know if it was a petition to the state or something else that would allow us to incorporate some local form of government. We also spoke about a special economic development zone beyond incorporation. So I just was curious then if PRCAC could follow up with the executive and see if he had some next thoughts on that. And the other thing was, so that comes back to this issue of the Canadian annexation. Just it's come to my attention only in the last few weeks. I'm not sure how bad the situation would need to be for it to happen, but I think right now, from what I understand at my work, and I've been in school looking at this with folks at I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kennedy School of Government in Harvard. I'm just about to finish up a certificate there I've been working on for the last couple of years as part of my other work. We're really looking for policy innovation, and I took the Point Roberts case and border exception cases to my classmates, and as a school project, I'm still kind of tying things up there. But once I got my act together, I need to make initiative to communicate on behalf of several Canadians that are in touch with me to communicate to the United States government and try to keep pushing that idea as well. There's something we need to do to get ourselves organized to handle the new situation, the ongoing situation in the economy, and we need to be able to think out of the box and work together, come up with a solution that is democratic and economically functional. So this thing about annexation to me is interesting. I don't have a particular agenda. I looked at it. I mean, when I bought here, I saw that our market there's a huge imbalance in the cost of housing here between us and BC generally. And given a whole new scenario for human rights and governance and borders and everything else, I think it's time to take a serious look at it. An educated look at it, maybe hopefully be as non-political, as non-controversial as possible, but what would be the next steps towards entertaining annexation or some sort of transfer of the land to Canada? I realize, of course, the possible controversy of all the people's different visions of what that might mean, But, you know, watching this documentary last night, it really struck me, you know, these are all of us here, everyday people. This really could be an opportunity, I guess, to unite rather than us being in a prison here with the lockdown and the new paradigm.
I'm
And
going to stop you there.
I met a lot of people
I'm
of
gonna stop you there,
goodwill.
Grant, just for time.
Okay,
But
thanks,
I-
Stephen.
But I wanted to check. I just want to make sure I understood when you were talking earlier. Were you talking about the idea of having Point Roberts look into the idea of incorporating itself as a town rather than an unincorporated area? Was that what you were speaking about in terms of?
Well, no, it was a method that Mr. Sadhu spoke of, and Tyler seems to understand it. There was some sort of method for a plebiscite that would allow us to have a actual like voting and more community input in our county governance. And it was not necessarily incorporating municipally, but Mr. Sadhu seemed to be aware that there was avenues that we could pull together a plebiscite, even as a citizens initiative. I believe he said it was legal, and pull together enough signatures where we could take a look at having like a democratic community form of government here for the point. That was.
I think that. Well, okay. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but that sounds like the only real option would be incorporation and then creating a government. But okay. But,
Again, Steve, I don't recall. I'm just showing up, just saying this is where it's at. If you could relay the request to the executive, I'd really appreciate it.
So to go back to South Paul and see what it was he was referring to, what his office was referring to.
Yeah, and of course I can go to PRBC and try to pull them together again, but Mr. Sadhu has been very cooperative, and I know he's open to innovative thinking, but I really would like to link in specifically the annexation question. I've been doing the homework here. I've got folks from Canada talking to me about it. I'd like to be able to put a nexus together, and we can look at, I would say, a rigorous scientific analysis of the question economically, politically, and environmentally.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Grant.
Okay.
Wait a second. Let me let somebody in here. Admit. Tom, is it a good time? I see you back in.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely great. Thanks for that, Grant. That's it's very, very informative. I'm curious.
Oh, hey, Tom.
When you were saying that you were discussing this and you touched on a plebiscite scenario, the plebiscite obviously is an organization that would serve as the mechanism. And so who were the conversations with, and what was the plebiscite organization that?
I don't know. That's why I'm trying to follow up. And he had a path forward. It wasn't something I was working on, but I can go back to Brian Calder and ask him. I'm sure he has better notes on it than I do.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
I thought what you were putting forward was very interesting, so I was just curious about that element of it.
Oh, yeah. Anything that gets some unity here would be helpful right now. And I'm telling you, I'm seeing this from the public.
Okay, hold on, Grant. I'm sorry. One thing I'd like to avoid the cross talks. Tom, why don't you tell us what you wanted to bring to the committee? Either the same thing or something different, rather than having a two-way conversation when we're really just in the public comment period for each person to make their comment.
Sure. I just have a quick statement which comes from the PRIBC. I think everybody on the current PRCAC understands very clearly what the PRIBC has done over the course of the last 2 years. And initially, in early 2019, we took great exception to the PRCAC as an entity which represented Point Roberts. And through the process that the application process in 2072 and planning committee meetings and planning commission meetings and county council meetings, we've come to the conclusion that the PRCAC is the only body in Point Roberts who the county currently considers to be a viable entity for communicating the needs of the community of Point Roberts. It's been clear. It's been said by Council Member Rudd Brown. The council does not wish to hear or entertain any competing ideas. It wants to hear it from the PRCAC. But we also have a letter from Satpal Sidhu, the county executive, dated October 13th, where he points out very clearly that his office has some issues with the effectiveness of the PRCAC. So while we had those same questions early on, and we still have issues with effectiveness, we actually think that the PRCAC right now is perhaps the only mechanism that can prevent further erosion of a chance of fighting off what this next downturn is going to mean, whether that be coming back or building back, whatever it might be. Right now, the PRCAC is the only mechanism for that. And right now, and I'll put this to Allison, because I know Allison is on the meetings that I watch and that I listen to, and she speaks, but I think it's fairly clear that after last council meeting and the executives actually speaking on camera and his representation of where the county executive's office is on the PRCAC, is like getting it from both sides. The county council says you're the officially recognized body and they want everything flowing through you. And now the county executive's office is saying right on camera in a county council meeting without any question whatsoever, he's not so sure that the PRCAC is the right mechanism. So Allison, would you speak to that? Because we've learned a lot in the last 2 years at the PRIBC. And one is, you can fix things that you recognize are broken, but you can't stop things you can't see from coming. And I think that's one of the things that's in play. There is actually an element in Whatcom County who might be okay with the PRCAC going by the wayside and replacing it with something else they might have in mind. So thank you. I think you guys are doing what it was set up to do, which is to collaborate as a community. That's why it was set up with the 3 organizations, voters, chamber, and taxpayers, and the 2 at large. That is supposed to represent a collaborative effort. That was what was sold to Point Roberts. And right now, the county executive, in full view of the entire county, says that if the PRCAC isn't walking lockstep with PDS and what they wish to have, maybe it's not a good thing. And I beg to differ. I think the PRCAC is our last shot at actually telling the county what needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen fast, they may find a way to disengage. So that's it.
Okay, Tom, thanks. I'm going to stop you there just for time. Yeah, we've heard those comments from Satpal when he was here earlier this year, and in that recent letter. He mostly just, my understanding is he wants the PRCAC to be able to work more effectively. I don't think he has totally thrown it out with the bathwater yet, but that could still come. But anyway, we'll see. Thanks, Tom. Let me just go to Matt. I think he might have been the next one on it. Did you have any comment you wanted to make, Matt? You're on. Everyone's on mute. So if they wanted to say something.
Olaf is on as well.
Yeah, Olaf, any comment you wanted to make?
Hi, it's Olaf Gravy here, calling in from Ladner.
Little hard to hear you, at least for me.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, and we're trying to, even though I haven't done a good job so far, I'm trying to limit comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah. I got this note from Grant Heitman to for this meeting. Thank you for allowing us to join. I'm representing on behalf of the Maple Beach group, again with Ron Laporte, and of course expressing our interest in whatever could be done in support of finding measures to mitigate any other flooding that could happen in Point Roberts. We had a big storm just a couple days ago, more storms coming, and who knows what the year holds. Just want to be put our name in the hat and make sure that our topic is continued to be discussed, and to see if we can get some help.
Thanks, Olaf. Are you, this is still sea flooding, or is this just rain flooding? I mean, was this?
Sea flooding,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay. Just
Coming
wondering.
over the seawall, yeah.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is anybody else from the public that?
Well, I have a question for Olaf.
Oh,
Olaf,
Yeah.
is the seawall further denuding? Has it gotten worse in the last couple of years?
Well, it has in the last few years. It's actually been almost a year now since I've been down because of COVID lockdown. We winterized the cabin last year in late November, so we're getting there now, to almost being a year since we've been there. But it has been we've seen further erosion of the seawall every single year. And it is getting worse, and we have pictures to document it, and we put together a bit of a presentation too a while ago. I don't know if you've seen it, but it shows the amount of erosion.
Okay.
Just so you know, Olaf, during this downtime, I have continued to look into the different projects that Whatcom County has been working on in Birch Bay, Lummi Island, and such, as far as the shoreline and seawalls and such like that, to see at what level they got before they got their assistance from the county, as well as looking into the issue of what is park's responsibility, what's the road's responsibility, because that's part of the fight that was going on because of where the seawall is. Part of it's the park, part of it is owned by the county. So I have actually been still looking into that to see if we can find a way to get you some funds from the county, if not through a shoreline grant. Can't hear you, Olaf. You're muted.
he said thank you.
Thanks
Oh, okay.
so much, Allison. Yeah, thank you. Greatly appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, thanks, Olaf. Anyone else? Matt, Louise, Linda, John, Michelle, anybody else who wanted to say something? Don't have to. It's just a public comment period.
I think I missed the discussion about the garbage. I'm sorry, I came in.
No, you haven't. Well, you missed it last month, but you haven't missed it for tonight yet. We haven't gotten.
Okay. Then I don't need to say anything yet.
Okay. Okay. Matt looks like he's unmuted. Was something you wanted to say, Matt?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Just
Okay.
wanted to say that.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Well, in that case, we'll move on the agenda to old business. First thing up here is update on. Sorry, let me just turn off my timer function. Okay. Update on changes to Whatcom County 2072. I had a conflict. I think it was just last week, but I think the news I heard was that County Council had adopted. I think Steve and Allison, I think we're maybe on that meeting, adopted the changes that we proposed.
Yep. They voted 7-0. Allison spoke briefly. I spoke briefly, mostly asking them to approve it. And it seemed kind of like a formality. Tom spoke, and it really, I didn't understand the function of that committee. Maybe I still don't, but it seems like it's just like a hearing is to a court case. You know, this is like a hearing, and maybe Allison can explain it better, but we passed, and then of course, then we went on to the actual county council with all 7 members there. Or there were some members missing, I guess, right? But anyway, so they voted 7-0. That's the net of it, with very little discussion about what's right or wrong with what we did, or what's right or wrong with 2072 or code in general. Maybe Allison can say something. It seemed like they were very interested in asking, well, okay, did the report from the staff report, the staff report was given out and it was approved, and they said, well, once that, or at least one of the members said, because it's approved, then we're approved. You know, I mean, I'm paraphrasing there, but that was sort of my emotional take on it, at least. But they did mention the staff report, and we know that came from Cliff Strong, and he was obviously approving of it. And there we go. It was kind of anticlimactic, and we were almost the only business that night. I mean, there was a few other things going on, and people talking about other issues.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Allison, anything you wanted to add, or that?
No, it's most of the discussion happened in committee.
Right.
As far as talking about it, and basically that yes, we need to move forward. And Cliff was very clear that yes, we should have started from the beginning, and that we will be starting that process. But that these changes at least will allow for some help in the interim while we do as we need to start from the beginning. And they said that they would help us where they can, but if we could do as much on our own and bring it to them, the faster it would go. If we're going to wait for them, it's, we're talking, years, to get it part of the 2025 is their next big change, but they are willing to absolutely listen to us if we can, get a group together and we can come up with, a visioning process and, economic development plan. If we can get pull from our community as much as we can, whatever expertise we can gather, if we can pull people from the port, whatever we can do on our own and take it to them, they can then help us get to the next stage without having to make them do all of it. So, I think, getting the information, working with Tom, that what he's got, using the people at the port of Bellingham that we're working on that stuff. I think that's where we need to do if we want to be proactive.
Okay, well, this year is almost over. We can start 2021 with the next round, this time starting with the vision concept and going down rather than trying to go from the bottom up. Good, okay. Otherwise, nothing else, I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is update on County Council's discussion on the Point Roberts mandatory curbside trash and recycling. So at the last meeting, to some people's dismay, but in any case, we passed a motion to recommend to County Council that they look into, well, I guess we actually recommended to County Council to lower the service level from 26 cans per year to 12 once a month. And that was discussed at a committee meeting a few weeks ago. Really just sort of batted around. There was some people were discussing the merits of it. Others were more discussing the question of why the PRCAC was proposing something different than what they had proposed a couple of years earlier. But it seemed to me that it was just ultimately maybe taken under advisement and nothing much more was coming from it. But Allison, I guess I'll take your take on it.
It's held over for Health Committee. It's not on the Health Committee agenda for Tuesday. There was a bit of a request from council to possibly consult the UTC for them to do a modeling of, what would change, what the costs would be and such if they were to amend it. There was also talk about having Jeff Hedges come back into the community and doing more work on seeing who wants what people use, and digging it in a little deeper, again. It didn't get much further than that. Stephen Oliver did say that it can be changed mid-year. It doesn't have to just be once a year. If council were to make an amendment in the beginning of 2021, that absolutely, if it was, a change on the tax roll as far as, the amount or anything like that, that he can absolutely make a change via issuing refunds, whatever, that it's possible. So, not sure where it's going to go next. If I will talk to the head of the committee for the Health Committee and see what she wants to do, if it's going to just go back into her committee, or if she wants us to do some more community meetings, if she wants us to do a full-blown survey, you know, with SurveyMonkey, where you can only sign in once per IP address and such like that, you know, because it's a little difficult to have in-person meetings, but that's kind of where it is now, because our SurveyMonkey from 2018 is a little outdated.
Right. Well, it certainly wouldn't hurt to get a better sense of what the community wants, because there certainly is plenty of opposition to what the PRCAC did last month. One thing before I get to you, Steve, one thing I thought was interesting about that meeting was when I listened to, or I guess attended virtually, were there was a lot of discussion that was around what Steve Oliver was being asked about, which was the whole issue of why we were having our the costs assessed through our tax bill rather than through some other means. And I wasn't sure why that came up, but it sounds like it was maybe something that Steve Oliver had actually raised himself rather than anybody from the community or from elsewhere.
That's what Tyler Bird said. They asked him at the last health department meeting or health committee meeting, you know, and he stated, you know, that was added because of a conversation, you know, he had had with Stephen Oliver. Stephen Oliver basically didn't want to deal with people calling, because I guess he gets a lot of calls from people about, why is this on my taxes? I don't want to pay it, you know, things like that. He just didn't want the headache. And because, you know, there was talk about the refunds at the UTC on the overpayment of taxes, he's like, he just didn't want the headache. So, you know, Stephen Oliver basically said, yeah, I really don't want this on my tax roll, but if the council wants it on my tax roll, then I'll do it. But, you know, so I think it's, which I can understand, you know, Stephen Oliver, you know, why would you want to have more work than you already have?
Right. Well, they could always just ask us, though, to tell people to stop calling him to complain about something that isn't really his problem. Anyway, okay, got it. Steve, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I would very much like to see an economic analysis of both the proposal, you know, going from 2 twice a month to 1 a month, still 32 gallons. And then also that proposal or that analysis would include the cost for, say, adding every week or adding more cans, you know, look at the various scenarios and put that out to the public. And I don't know who is the right authority to do it. I mean, I'm thinking of Allison naturally, but somebody
it's the UTC, and I need to check with county council to see if they did make that request of Mike Young at the UTC.
I would say, Steve,
this would be big. If we can get this and we feel comfortable about what it says, we should push this out into our different news sources so that the public will get an idea of what the proposal means. Because there's confusion of okay, well, am I going to drop a little bit of money, or what I really want will now cost way more money? I mean, people just don't know, and it could be much less pain for some people. It could be more pain for others. At least they're just imagining, so we don't have the data. We need the data.
But I would say before asking anyone to really delve into, especially multiple, it'd be one thing to ask the UTC to say what's the difference between the current 26 versus the possible future 12, which was because that was what this committee, you know, went forward with last time. But it would be even more confusing to have even more options. I think it would make more sense if you were going to, before you would even consider going that route, would be to find out, to get a sense of what the community wants, because I'm not, as much as we hear about the desire to lower the service level, I'm not convinced that's actually what the community as a whole might really want. So I'm not sure we would need to investigate lots of different options if it turned out that and I'm just speculating myself, because I don't know what the people here think, what the majority is, or even whether it's a slim majority or a lopsided majority, if there is even one. You know, people might be happy with the way it is now, or they might want change, but we don't really know that. We only know our own sort of circle of people that we happen to talk to, interact with. I mean, Steve Oliver might have an idea because he might get complaints from a whole range of people, or Can-Do might have feedback that they get from supportive people and people who would like less service or whatever. So some people might know, but I don't know that we really know. I would suggest the survey idea, if we were going to get into that, would make good sense as an informational step before asking anyone to try to come up with economics around ideas that possibly nobody wants. And maybe only 2 ideas need to be fleshed out, not 6, if people are more or less happy with either happy with what they have or think they would be happy with some single alternative.
Well, I was going to say Samantha had done a survey for 3 months using SurveyMonkey in 2018, from July 2018 through the beginning of October of 18. And there was 709 respondents, and it was 70% of the people wanted the 12 a year and 30% wanted the 26.
Wasn't that before the whole program started though? Didn't it start in 19?
It started in 2019, but the ordinance was passed in June of 18.
Right. They knew what they wanted. They knew what they thought they wanted, but they hadn't actually experienced how the current arrangement.
The question was actually, what do you currently use and what would you like to have?
Oh, okay.
So it was 70% used 12 or less and 30% used more. And then when asked what, service you would like, it was a 70-30 split again out of 709 responses. And it took 3 months to get 709 responses.
Right.
Well, I think just as a community member, I would think that what Steve is proposing is what I'd like to see, because I think everybody involved in communications on Nextdoor and whatever has an assumption of what it would mean. That is what's driving what they would want. And I think that knowing an actual number for what the impact would be for you is a better way to inform yourself on what you want than, thinking something would work one way and then finding out after the fact it doesn't.
Thanks, Michelle. Steve, you were going to say something?
Well, I still think that there's, and I'm agreeing with Michelle, obviously. I still think that someone should attempt to put together a couple scenarios of cost. And that would include people that voluntarily want more cans, or people that call in and say, hey, you can do that. You can call in and say, this month, would you pick up 3 extra cans? Or you just put them out there. That costs you more money. And look at some scenarios that are typical. How we decide what those are, I don't know. But to get some dollars and cents against those scenarios so that people can see the spectrum of possibility. Now, if you could then apply that to the SurveyMonkey result that was 70-30, that's a great information. You combine those 2 things and maybe we get some proper feedback. I mean, I learned the hard way in my own technology career, and like what Steve Jobs always said is that, you ask a person what they want and they can't really tell you. They really can't. You have to give them something, show them a prototype or whatever you're showing them. And then they go, oh, okay, I like this color, or I like that color. And so if you fill in the imagination a little bit, however you want to do it, and innocently, not saying these are the ways, A, B, C, choose one. No, these are the ideas. You will not get the best answer. And even the SurveyMonkey results were probably not the best because there wasn't necessarily dollars and cents applied to that either. So they had to imagine it. Okay, that's it.
Well, I was going to say, so to answer you, Steve, and you, Michelle, the only way to properly do that is what council recommended, which is, seeing as the UTC just went through all of the numbers and stuff, if they could basically create a scenario of saying, okay, well, if we switch to this, they have all of the data in their computer system to be able to say, okay, well, then the truck needs to go out this, many days. And they can then say, okay, well, the once a month would cost X. If you wanted every other week, it's going to cost Y. If you want weekly, it's going to cost Z. And they could actually give us a reasonable forecast that's going to be probably within pennies, because that's what they do. And they actually have all of the actual data. That's what they do.
And including the cost of extra, if you did it, if it was, the scenario was only once a month, and you had you'd know what it would cost if you needed to put out an extra can or something like that. Because
well, so the original tariff before we even had mandatory, if you pull up the original tariff, it said if you have once a month service, it costs you this. If you have biweekly service, you pay this. If you have weekly service, you have this. And they actually had options of, you could get a 20-gallon mini can once a week, every other week, once a month. You could get a 32-gallon every week, every other week, once a month. You know, they had all of those options, and it showed you the price on the tariff sheet. So this is what the UTC does. This is not reinventing the wheel. If you go to anybody else's tariff, anywhere else in unincorporated Whatcom County, it lists all the options. The only thing that is standard that doesn't change is the every other week recycling. That stays the same for everybody. But depending on what your other service is that you pick for your actual garbage, it varies depending on which you pick. So this is what they do every day, and you know, this is what the tariff used to look like, and this is what the tariff looks like in the rest of unincorporated Whatcom County, other than I think Lummi Island. Everybody else also has the option of green waste and food waste. So, you know, which is another line item. So I think the council's idea to go to the UTC using the usage numbers that they have from CANDO and being able to use all the data, they're going to be able to be the ones to give us. Any of us trying to come up with it would be wrong.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You know, completely.
Well, it sounds reasonable enough. It sounds that's what council's doing anyway. Through the committee, that's what they're doing anyway. They're going to.
I just need to verify that was something that was brought up by the committee to ask the UTC to do that. I just need to find out if it's been followed through with.
Okay.
Can I make a comment on the process?
Sure, Judson.
Yeah, so a motion was made with the chamber not being notified that a motion was going to be made. And I don't know why that was necessary last week. So a vote was made. I know I was absent, but I don't know why the chamber in this case couldn't have been notified beforehand that a motion was going to be made. I know that Allison said that there was no time to do anything but vote on it now, but it doesn't seem so right now to me. And I'd just like to know that no motions are made again in the future without a chance for the groups to weigh in on it. Even if I was there last time, there was no chance for the chamber to weigh in on it. Even a week before notice would have allowed that.
Well, I know the topic was on our agenda. I don't think it did not say there was going to be a motion, but the topic of consideration of the service level. I can't remember what the agenda said. It was, but I know the trash issue was on the agenda, but I don't think it certainly wasn't that specific as to say we were going to contemplate a motion at that meeting. Yes, Steve.
And I erroneously told Judson that, I don't think there'll be a vote on that tonight.
Ah, right. Right.
But I'm just saying, why can't there be notice when something like that happens? That's unnecessarily causes.
Well, I don't know that. I mean, I don't know practically. I mean, we could slow down our process, except when there's a reason why something is timely, which in this case there was a sense that because of the upcoming county council committee meetings, there was a time element to it. We could have said, let's not take any action. Well, that would have been fine. We could have done that. But the majority at the meeting was willing to go through with that. I mean, even
an email a week before or a couple days before would have done what I'm talking about.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
So why not?
Well, it was on the agenda, and it was at the taxpayers meeting, where a motion was made at the taxpayers meeting for either myself or Steve to make a motion at the PRCAC to have the PRCAC recommend that the letter by the taxpayers and also on my part of the voters be followed through with on the PRCAC and be forwarded. Which I can't remember if that was the day before we had our taxpayers meeting. I think it was the night before the PRCAC meeting.
Yes.
But at the time, we were under the understanding, based on when the UTC hearing was, that we were on a time crunch. It wasn't until the last meeting, which was last Tuesday, or that I found out from listening to the meeting, that Steve Oliver said he could change it at any time. Because for years we've been under the impression that it had to be decided on by the UTC so the tax roll could be changed, because it went into effect on January 1st. It was just in the last couple of weeks we found out that Steve Oliver said, well, actually, no, I can change the tax roll at any point in the year.
Okay, next time, could we get some notice at least, even a couple days at least?
I think all we can really rely on is the agenda. And we are trying to put out the agenda, not ridiculously early, but, like 5 to 7 days before the meeting, so that people know what we're going to be talking about at a meeting. Maybe one should assume that any issue that's on the agenda could result in a motion of something. I mean, our agendas are not so detailed as generally, our agendas generally are not so detailed as to know what we're going to do. Sometimes, or some people might know. I mean, if someone knows the whole point of putting an item on the agenda is to lead to an action item and a motion and not just a discussion, we can certainly try to make that clear.
Yeah, maybe as soon as
but it isn't always clear. A discussion could lead to a motion because it seems like rightly or wrongly seems like the right thing to do. So I don't know that I would want to suggest that we completely tie ourselves up for that reason. But I think we can certainly, as a goal, we can certainly have a goal to try to make that clear and to make it as early as possible.
How about when it's known that a motion's going to happen, that it gets added to the agenda?
Yes, that would be reasonable enough if we know that's going to be the outcome.
Per Robert's Rules of Order, any agenda item may be correlated with a motion. So anytime you see an item on an agenda, there can be a correlating motion, which is why we need to make sure anytime we have a meeting that we all try and show up, because any agenda item can be preceded by a motion. You don't always have a motion prior to an agenda. The whole idea of the agenda item is to talk about something, and then somebody makes a motion to either adopt, amend, or such.
Yeah, I got it. It just seemed like it was known before the meeting, that's all.
It was the night before.
It wasn't clear to me, but but it might have been to some.
Well,
okay. Well,
it was on the taxpayers meeting the night before is when it happened.
Okay, how about this? I'll do it. Whenever I've got a motion, I'll let everyone know beforehand.
Well, it's a good point all around. To the extent one knows it, we'll try to get it known. But if it's I think Allison's point sort of ties into mine earlier. It's a good idea to assume. Well, and I'm not sure it's assuming the worst or assuming the best. If you see an interesting topic on the agenda, this is not just doesn't apply just to the committee members, but to the public as well. If you see what looks like an interesting or alarming topic on the agenda, it could be that there'll be a motion of some kind of action coming out of that. That would seem like a reasonable assumption. Won't always be true. Sometimes something will just be on there for discussion. Presumably, especially if it's a new issue that really hasn't been talked about before. But in any case, I think your point is reasonable enough, Judson, that we should try to give ourselves a heads up. But I think it's also important to realize that any agenda topic could have I wouldn't call it a hidden motion, but it could discussion could result in the idea that, oh yeah, let's actually try to take some action on whatever the topic is.
Thank you.
It's no different than 2072 with all of the different special meetings. There would be, you guys would discuss, I wasn't, on the board at the beginning of it, you would discuss a whole section, and then somebody would make a motion to make that change, and you guys would vote on it. Then you'd move to the next one. There'd be multiple motions on the same topic throughout the evening to adopt certain items for change. It's, that's just kind of how it works.
I think we've all got it.
Okay, heads up.
Thanks, Justin. So the next agenda topic, if I can move on to the next one, is a way of easing out of the garbage topic by talking about just a couple words, if Allison's willing to, about the 4 seminars that Beth Chisholm from Washington State University Extension gave over the last month or so?
Sure. I know Michelle was on them, a lot of them with me. The information from Beth was great. We had a lot of community members participate. We learned a lot about composting, realized why a bunch of us, our composts weren't working properly, getting our carbon to nitrogen combination done correctly. We discussed, you know, some where all of our recycling goes in Canada, which was great. They gave us a full review of where our soft plastic goes out in Burnaby, where our glass goes out in Abbotsford. We talked about maybe reaching out into the opportunities, things that all of our recycling goes into Canada, to see if we can add a few other streams of recycling that are available in BC. You know, especially Tetris packing.
Does the styrofoam happen to be one of those streams?
That was one of the ones we were talking about. One was styrofoam, and the other one was like Tetra packaging. You know, so like the milk cartons and stuff, which have been recycled forever in BC. But we were also did a lot of talk about the community garden, and you know, possibly utilizing the community garden in their composting there on Benson. I know there was some volunteers saying that they would go around and gather leaves and stuff from people's homes who don't do their own composting, to be able to add it to the community garden to help their compost. And, you know, possibly the community working together even in sections to can make their own community compost areas. You know, if someone doesn't have room on their own property or doesn't want to do it on their, you know, create community style composting. And as well working on trying to get some commercial recycling and, you know, some recycling for the market for their green waste and such like that. And was finding that for years, the market used to give away old produce to people with farm animals, and they had stopped doing it for a while because someone complained. And just recently they have started doing it again.
Yeah.
So instead of throwing the old produce into the dumpster, they are allowing people who have, you know, chickens, llamas, whatever you happen to have, to come pick it up and feed it to the farm animals instead of it going into the dump. And she's looking forward to coming up next year when, you know, hopefully everything's open again, and taking a tour of the point and checking out people's, you know, composts and helping them work on it. And she's also interested in trying to get some curbside recycling for day visitors. Being able to have something, you know, people who are here just for the day to be able to drop off their, you know, plastic water bottle or whatever they have, just some bins, whether it be at like the market or the park or something, so that we can stop getting the recycling from going into the trash. From people who are just, you know, visiting during the day. Of course, we don't have that now, but hopefully come next summer, we do again. So she's interested in getting some of that stuff going as well.
Good. Okay. Thanks. Well, I'm glad it was successful. My apologies for not managing to attend myself. Yes, Steve.
Just a note, a proposal that's been rattling around that I didn't really make it in the public, I don't think. It's from George Wright, who's been a composter, gardener, et cetera, is about a little community project which could possibly make money and even employ some people, that kind of thing. Is you buy these machines that take the branches and chop them up into pellets of different sizes, including officially for pellet stoves. It's a great renewable resource, and since branches don't compost very well, you know, it takes a while, and you have to chip them up anyway if you want to, and get the chemistry right. But anyway, this would be an alternative to that, and it would help with the larger branch green waste. And these machines can take dump trucks full of miscellaneous crazy branches, which we get a lot of, and you know, they're not nice, they're not neat bundles that you can just put into a shredder. You know, often things come as a big mess with roots and rocks. And anyway, I thought that was really good, and the cost of the machines is not super cheap, but it's probably doable for us. So I'm just putting that out there. I just remembered that was a big proposal he made, at least among a few of us, and I took it to heart. That's it.
Stephen, you missed a few of those meetings. If you'd like, she did videotape all of them except for the first one.
Okay.
And she said anybody who wants them, we can contact her and she will email out the video, the recording of the classes.
Cool.
Good.
Very nice.
Okay, well, thank you for that update. Next thing on the agenda was a date for the steps in the PRCA at-large member selection process. I sent out a note a week or two ago, I don't remember when it was exactly, with the basically repeat process of what we've used the last 2 cycles. This will be the 3rd cycle of trying this for the at-large seat. It's the one I currently fill, and I don't currently plan to run for the 2nd term that I would be entitled to seek. I really enjoyed the when there weren't any meetings back in March and April. It gave me a new perspective on things. So anyway, I'm thinking of not being a part of that, but the process would need to get underway. Hold on, need to get underway pretty soon. And I did, before I posted that note to the community, I did send a similar summary to Satpal's office to make sure that that he, as the still newish county executive, would be willing to have us use that same process that we used at the end of Jack Lyle's tenure, and then used already last year when they were transitioning from Jack to Satpal, and I think Satpal maybe wasn't quite sure he liked it when it hit him like among his first things when he took office, but he was willing to have us use that same process again. He was clear, as the previous county executive was as well, that ultimately he does have the authority and responsibility to select who sits in the at-large seat. So I suppose, there's always the remote possibility that somebody chooses to run and actually gets the most support from the community, and for some reason he doesn't think that's the right person for this committee and he doesn't accept them. But we've used it twice, and so far the executive has selected the person that was put forward based on the informal voting process. And we are still dealing with the same informal voting process. There are a few people in town who don't like the non-secret nature of the ballot process, because it is just an email sent to us, and it does need to indicate the sender's name and their address, so we know it's somebody living here and or owning property here, because it is open to people who don't live here but have property here. So there is that pitch that some people don't like, but we've had pretty good participation. I mean, it's nothing like an actual election, but we've been getting over 150 people participating, which seems pretty good to me from what one might expect. So the only real question then is the dates. The process would be, I mean, I did in my note encourage people to express interest still in November, but that isn't, I guess, 100% required, and to actually take the step of filing the application that one needs to file with the county. And I provided the link to that in the email. I asked people to do that by the end of the month, but that isn't completely critical. And that we would need to pick a date in early December to have a candidates forum, assuming that anybody expresses any interest in running for the seat or being considered by the residents for that seat. And Satpal, in his response, did indicate he would like to participate in that candidate forum as a questioner, or at least a listener. So I don't know exactly how we'll manage that. I think we're more likely going to tell him the date that it is and hope that he can make it. If we get real pushback, I guess we'll end up having to see if we have to juggle the date to meet his schedule. So I would say we see if there's a time, and so what I would propose we do, if we do what we did last time. We had that forum. Last time we only had 2 people who had expressed an interest, and then we started the email voting. Some people actually jumped the gun, but essentially my intention would be to start the the email voting right after that forum and have it run until right before our meeting in December. So opening up the calendar, our meeting in December, Thursday is the 17th of December. So if sometime around the 9th or 10th of December, we had that that special meeting that would function as a candidate forum, we could advertise that starting right after this meeting, and plan to have that process of having people hopefully express their interest soon, have that meeting on the 10th, have voting from the 10th to the 17th, and then put the name to the county executive. We keep doing this around this time of year because these terms end officially in February. And I guess the new person takes office essentially for the February meeting. So anyway, it seems like it makes sense to do it now. Gives the county executive a little time to actually make the decision in December or early January, and then we can be all set in February. So I don't know, how does the 10th sound to the other PRCAC members as a date, assuming anybody actually ever expresses any interest in holding this position?
I would think the 10th for a special meeting would work.
Yeah.
Steve, Judson?
It's okay with me.
Okay, we'll try that. I mean, I'll just assume it'll be 6 o'clock. I mean, our usual, you want to make it 7?
6 is fine. I'll feed the family early. It's all good.
Okay, so we'll stick with 6 o'clock. We'll make it that time on the 10th. It'll, again, I think at this point we can be pretty confident to say it's going to be a Zoom meeting. It's not going to be an in-person meeting.
Yeah, it'll be a special meeting.
A special meeting, but it'll be via Zoom. We're not going to be getting together for it. And then we'll have that week or so of time for emails to come in and go from there. Okay, I will put out a note to that effect if nobody has any.
I would suggest if you're going to put this out tomorrow, that we also do a follow-up one again on the 27th and then again on the 4th.
Good idea. Good idea.
So that, we put the notice out at least, well, you've already put it out, but put it out with the date at least 3 times through the different venues so that, people are less likely to miss it. They might miss the first one, but hopefully not the second one or the third one. By the third one, hopefully it'll cover as many people as possible.
Yeah, good point, definitely. And we don't have a very big crowd on here. I can see all the boxes on one pretty big screen.
Yeah.
12 people. So, but if the 12 people on this call mention it to other people, at least that will also begin to help to the extent anyone is interested in doing that, spreading the word, or even finding people they think.
Maybe Bill will join us.
He's on the call. That's the first step.
Well, I can fill out paperwork. I've been doing it for years.
Sold.
I'll be happy to, so.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a very quick one. Sometime in the last few weeks, I set up a new email address, which I've already have. I think I included it in one of the recent notes. Maybe it was just in the agenda for this meeting, or maybe it was even in the announcement
It's
about
in the agenda. Yeah, it's
and also maybe in the selection process email. Anyway, we have a new, and people have already started to use it. We have this new email address, prcac.comment, singular, I think it's singular, at gmail.com, and emails that come into that, it doesn't seem to be working quite right at the moment. We need to check on this. But emails coming into that should be forwarded automatically to all 5 PRCAC members. There was a recent note that Allison brought to my attention that I don't think I received, so I'll have to go back in and see. And Judson, I don't know if you've ever done the confirmation step of, there's an email you should have received from Gmail or from this account asking you to confirm something, I guess, that will set you up. But we can work on that if that hasn't happened. And I will check it again myself because I think I might not have gotten an email. So there may be some kinks in the process, but I know I have gotten some. So it's working partially or at least sporadically. And we'll just need to get that out to the community so people know how to reach us. It's an easy way to reach all 5 of us. And that will also be the email used for the for the voting. And the next thing is here's a new person who just came into the waiting room. Okay, next item on the agenda is the PRCAC bylaws. Thanks to excellent prodding by Allison and help from Allison, work by her, and that helped me do a little more work myself. She and I have prepared a draft that I just only a few. Yes, Judson.
Sorry,
Oh.
he's just waving to Bill
Oh, sorry.
or Dave. Sorry, to Dave.
Dave Ellis.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I just a few hours ago sent the draft bylaws to the committee members. So I can't imagine anyone had a lot of time to go through them carefully. So this may just be an opportunity for a first brief mention of these new bylaws. But maybe we can, if people can look at them carefully and think about things if they like it, that's great. But if they have changes they want to propose, that they think about those over the next few weeks, and maybe we can have a discussion and even a possibly decision at the next meeting, or if not the next meeting, the one after that, to try to actually finally, after years, give this organization some working bylaws. Right now, they're just trying to codify essentially what we're doing. So it's set up with the 3 organizations providing a member, having the 2 at-large members. It does have the concept of having alternates, so that each of the 3, not an at-large alternate, but the 3 organizations have alternates that can sit in for the primary or intended member when that person can't make it to a meeting. It could be changed, of course, if the county executive prefers the idea that we have, in order to get this elusive consensus, that if it would be helpful to, for example, to have 4 at-large and 3 organizational members, so that the at-large people can actually outvote the organizational members and bring more perspective from the community, potentially. Obviously we could either change that now or change it by an amendment at some point in the future. It has timing for when the meeting notices should go out, when the agenda should be posted. Has the possibility of someone being removed if they miss too many meetings during the course of a year without good excuses. It has a conflict of interest policy in it, a provision in it, for people preferably to self-identify that they have a conflict, but if not self-identified, then it could be identified for them and then discussed by the other members of the committee to see if that person needed to be excluded from discussion and activity on a certain topic. Yes, Steve?
How much was this edited by Allison? Either one can answer. We're looking at the post-edit.
Yeah, this is the post-edited version. Well, she had comments on a few sections. I had originally this is still a document that Keith Glading started to prepare several years ago, well, at least probably 3 years ago. He has been on here for 2 years now. And then about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I went through and made some changes and had some questions. And so Allison started with my marked up copy, had her own set of questions and some answers to some of my questions. And then she and I actually this afternoon spent some time going through areas that we thought needed some attention. So I don't know how much her fingerprints are on it, but there are a few of them, and mine are there as well.
But we consider this now our official draft, period. This is what we're going to work from.
Yeah, but it's a draft. So if somebody wants to either add a whole concept that we left out or change the way we proposed handling some concept, that can certainly be done. So I would encourage everyone to read through the whole thing, make a red line version or come up with some provisions, or there might be something that we didn't even touch on that you feel like should be in there. Yeah, it's a draft. It's not the document. I mean, if everyone had about a week and a half to look at it or something, and we could have actually had a discussion and maybe thought it was wonderful and approved it. But I don't think we're
for the next meeting. Let's have put it on the agenda to talk about it for the next meeting.
Oh yes, for sure.
Any comments? Okay.
For sure, I would suggest that it be on the agenda to discuss and adopt, unless there are whole new ideas that need to be changed, or things that we can't just change on the fly and adopt still manage to get into a position to adopt. But yeah, it doesn't have to be adopted next month because it's been years that it's been in the works. So if it flips over to January or even beyond, that's not the end of the world. But it's now exists as a coherent document that can be looked at and considered. Yes, Steve.
Who's this going to go out to? Just the committee?
Well, right now it has only gone to the committee. I have no problem with it going out more broadly.
Well, don't send it out to anyone else. And also this version should be edited to have draft on it in capital letters and a version number, which could be just the date. Whatever works.
Actually, I think it has both of those things in the name of the file, but not on the document itself.
Yeah, it should be in the document itself. But then it's okay to send to other people, because if other people start commenting, we know which version they were commenting on. You know, that's a safety function too. So
yeah.
Okay. Looks good. It actually is appearing. It's like magic. Just took no time at all.
It's progress, I think.
Some of it was just simple fine tuning and going through it. And I noticed that the notification to the public was before notification to the board members. And then like the, previous writer of it had like put them backwards. And I'm like, how can you tell the public before you're having a meeting before you tell the board members? So there was some just little things like that we were fine tuning and removing repetitive, erroneous language or language that you needed a dictionary to understand.
Yep.
Great.
Okay. So I encourage everyone to read it. We'll see if we can find a good way to, it'd be nice if we had a website just to post it, but anyway.
Well,
Anyway.
there might be comments, the executive might have some.
Yes, I did. After I sent it to you guys, I did send it to Satpal's office, copied Jed, I forgot what his last name is, Holmes, I think it is, Jed Holmes, and also his Suzanne Milner, who works in his office, passed it on to them for any comments they would have as well.
Make sure we follow the legal formality of the county for their structure of a committee.
Right. Okay, I'll leave that.
Free
now.
lawyer.
Say it again?
Free lawyer.
Right.
Because it would go through the council's or
hope-
executive's attorney
I
to
would
make
hope so.
sure.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so I think that wraps up old business. We have 2 items of new business here. Also arguably old business, but newish again. One is that there's an item up in I guess it's in county council about the county budget for the next 2-year cycle. And they have, in that they have $40,000 over the course of the next 2 years. So $20,000 a year coming from the tax benefit district funds. And we haven't had much discussion about that recently, but it really just ties back to the issue that David Glatley and I met with the public works folks about. I don't know when that might have been the end of last year. I don't remember if it was the end of last year, beginning of this year. Back, it tied into when we were also alarmed at how high the overhead is when we had the county engage a landscaper to do that, to work with the garden club on the landscaping on Tyee, and it was about a $5,000 job, but the total cost was $10,000 or $11,000 because Public Works had an extra $5,000 or $6,000 of costs associated with it. So what this $20,000 per year is for this year, for 2021 and 22 in the budget, is just to cover that same work. And the only reason it's at the level of 20 rather than a more finely tuned number that would probably be on the order of 10, 11, or 12,000 is to avoid exceeding whatever more realistic number they put in. So if they put in 11,000 and it turned out to be 11.5 or something like that, they would find themselves, I guess, in budget woe. And by setting it at 20, well above what they anticipated being, they just free themselves of that administrative problem. But it's not, there's no expectation of $20,000 being spent in each of the next 2 years for the landscaping. It's still expected to be about $5,000 of actual work. And a few thousand.
I actually have the numbers for 2018 and 19, if you'd like them.
Oh, sure, if you got them there.
So 2018 from the TBD fund, the county took $4,026.11 in fees to distribute the $5,316 to the landscaping company. In 2019, the county took $5,144.88 in fees to distribute the $8,452 to the landscaping company. Hold on, give me a second. I can give you 2020 thus far.
Yeah, that's good work if you can get it.
As of September 30th, 2020, the landscaper has been paid $3,819, and the county has taken, it's under two separate line items. One line item for $616.40 and another line item for $513.50.
Well, maybe there's going to be a Christmas surprise or something when it gets up to the old levels, but that might be great if they were actually down to only $2,000 or $3,000.
Yeah. Well, the landscaping, just even the contract itself is way less, it seems, what they've paid.
But their costs seem to be independent of that. I mean, we've talked about this after David and I met with them. We, basically, part of the problem is we're doing such a small job. Their overhead is going to be what it is, and if we were doing a bigger job, the economics would seem a little bit more reasonable, although not as good as I hoped. Because if a big job, they would, like if we were putting sidewalks all the way up Tyee Drive or something like that, it would be a real expensive job. But unfortunately, their piece of it would also be really expensive. So it's not entirely economies of scale, but we certainly get the worst end of it with such a small project, and the cost that they assign to the project for dealing with the legal issues on the contract and administration of the fees and whatnot. But it's not a new issue. It's just the same issue again. And this new money for the next 2 years is again just to support that same project without the expectation that all of that money is going to be spent, but it'll cover what they do need to spend.
Yeah, it's usually it's just shy of 14,000 between the labor and the administrative fee.
Yeah. Do you want to touch, Allison, on that? Oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in a general sense, the fact that we have not really been, other than the work and the brouhaha about the fees and all that, which is a very righteous indignation on our part, I would say, is that we have to ramp up somehow, whatever that means, what we're doing in the TBD funds, because that is one of the charters of PRCAC. The money needs to be spent. I think not all of it. Like Jeff Christopher created this 80-20 rule, which we believe PRCAC agreed to, and I'm okay with that. But what are we going to do with the 20? We've had lots of conversations about what to do. We've even had proposals. We've had all proposals which were accepted, like the Marine Drive widening thing for the trail, all this kind of stuff. But nothing happens, So I think it behooves us to somehow over the next, pick a number, 6 months, get something done. Move the ball at least publicly and usefully. Because obviously the eyeballs are not on us right now about this issue, but they ought to be, because it's money that's not really doing anything. And I know, and on one last thought, there are some people that are very concerned, well, gee, we got $1 million+ we should really save it for a big thing. Okay, fine. That's where the 80-20 idea came. We shouldn't be hurting our ability to do something with some of the money. And so we should get on with it somehow. And I'm not really saying exactly how, but we should get on with it.
Well, when I joined this group almost 2 years ago, that topic, the matter you mentioned, the widening of, or that whatever, some kind of shoulder issue on Marine Drive near Lighthouse Park was, I thought, already something that was relatively close to being done, but I have no idea what the actual status was then or what it is now. But if that's something that would benefit from having TPD funds available, we could check in with the county on that.
Yeah. What happened was kind of the history was is that through some wrangling, we got under Joel at that time, wrangling, we finally got them to come up with some numbers, and we produced some nice professional documents, and that kind of thing. So we got them to come up with some numbers, and then it kind of fell by the wayside. And Joel would call them like once a week, it seemed like, and I was calling Joel twice a week. I don't know. Everybody's bugging each other, and we weren't getting anywhere. And finally, they wanted to have a meeting, and they came to Point Roberts and had a meeting. Okay, what do you guys want? And it's like, those of us that have been working for months and months and years on getting at least one project going, were chagrined to say, well, what do you mean, what do we want? We gave you one project. We've given you lists of other projects. Now, to be fair, they did come back after that crazy moment, in my opinion, and they did give us a proposal for what costs are for widening and making trails, if you will, in other parts of Point Roberts. And so we did put that into their head, but that's millions and millions of dollars. So everyone grumbles, there's no way that our TBD can afford that. But that means we still have to come up with a priority. If we're going to use the TBD funds for making trails or widening the road for pedestrians and horses and bicycles, then where would we pick that poison? Where would that land? So there's some work to be done here, and we should get on with it. But and just I'll end with saying, and it will have to be something that the public will then look back on and go, hey, that was really cool. You guys, you and the county actually got something done, and it was worth the money, which is never an easy thing to do in politics, right?
Sure.
There was a resolution at one point regarding the widening of Marine Drive. I will have to actually look at it. It was I was reading a bunch of resolutions all the way back to 1991. Anything to do with Point Roberts all the way back to 1991. I about went blind. And there was one resolution that I didn't get to yet that actually was about the widening of Marine Drive. So I will put that one, because it might, again, been one of those ones where Whatcom County made a resolution, which was step one of the process, and then step 2, 3, 4 never got, continued on. Similar to, I found two resolutions for us for a sewer district in the commercial area of Point Roberts, which they approved, SEPA approved, everything got approved, and then it just kind of died and never made the next steps.
What year was that one?
Oh, you were going to ask me that? It's on my list.
Sorry.
There was so many of them.
So many broken promises.
Well, no, it's just sometimes it was, so there was a sewer resolution in 2001 and a resolution in 2004. The one in 2004 had full SEPA approval, state approval, and everything. So I just never could find anything about it again after that particular resolution of where the county approved it. So, but I can find that.
Just because they say they're going to do something on that level, the Public Works has to get together and actually do the engineering. And we were approved that they would do the engineering, which they did evidently, along the Marine Drive, that maybe 300 feet of paving, just to pick a number. And they did get some planning done and some budgeting done, but I'm still not sure what the real number was. And then they didn't come back and say, all right, Chairman of PRCAC, we're ready. Go to the public, tell them we're ready. That didn't happen. What happened, Because
I have learned very quickly in going through all of these resolutions that unless someone or a group of people continue to follow through, it very easily goes to the bottom of the pile. If you want to stay on the top of the to-do list, you need to make sure you're continually following up with them, because they're not going to follow up with you.
Okay, I'll make a point. Can it see my to-do list?
I'll follow up with the resolution.
So we're Point Roberts is at the bottom of this, I guess. That's how they look at it, right? Okay.
Well, that ties in pretty well to the next thing that I wanted to bring up, and actually we could tie it back a little bit to the bylaws. Another piece of the bylaws is having the mechanism to have subcommittees, which would not be subcommittees of the 5 members of the board, but more having the draft at least is to have a member of this committee who is a liaison to the subcommittee, and the subcommittee is made up of interested residents of the community for something. So it could be Lighthouse Park in general, or it could be this road improvement, maybe just a specific one right around there. Then there would be somebody, and the committee would be trying to do things. It would be fun. The liaison member would be bringing us back information or taking information back from us. to the committee. Anyway, one piece of that. The other thing that is the last item on the agenda right now is a topic that we have also discussed at this committee in the past, which is trying to stay more in tune with what the county is. Well, it's a two-way street, but part of it is just to know what they're talking about when Point Roberts comes up on anybody's agenda in Bellingham, that we should be enough, and we should create a mechanism within our committee so that we are in touch with the different organizations. It's probably mostly Parks and Public Works that do things here, but it could be maybe it could be something else as well, I guess health, whatever, but have some mechanism in place, not just for us to get ideas to them, which we also need to A, have the ideas, and B, convey them and then stay on them like we were just talking about.
Wait, what do you mean by county projects? You mean things like,
well for example, when the roads were paved last year, and most all or either some or all of us had no idea it was going to be happening, and then when it happened, it was about to happen, so that wasn't going to, it must have been, would have been dealt with at county level a year or two earlier when they were doing their planning. And if we had known about it, we might have said something about the quality of the roads or the timing of the job or something like that. Not whatever. So that'd be one example, or things to do with Lighthouse Park. I mean, that's more likely something we would have known about. But whenever Point Roberts is going to show up on a county council committee agenda, or it's probably come from some department in the county, unless it's spontaneously coming from a council person. But it's probably the result of some work product coming out of Public Works or Parks or something else. And it seems like too often it's a surprise to us, which would be because we aren't, as a community, and if we're the ones who should be having that relationship with the county government, it shouldn't be a surprise to us. There should somehow that we could be tied into that. David Glatley was maybe the best tied into some people, to various groups within the county government during his tenure on the committee. He's obviously no longer around, but we don't really. And Allison, of course, keeps an eye on what's going on, at least at the council and committees. But it'd be nice if the county executive could let the administrative organizations under him know that when you're about to start chatting amongst your colleagues about, widening a road, ripping up a sidewalk, whatever, taking away the boardwalk at Point Roberts, or whatever the thing is, that would be the time to call Point Roberts and let them know that it's about to be coming up, and if this is the time for us to give our input.
We didn't know about the TBD funds being on the
right
agenda until I saw it on there.
Right. Now, it turned out
like they haven't been talking to us about TBD funds for years, and they didn't let us know.
Right. It turned out at this time we sort of did know about it. Say this was an issue that it was tied into what David and I had talked with them about a year ago, but it hadn't been brought up to us recently to say it's finally coming up. Do you want to weigh in? Yeah. Okay, Steve, what were you going to say?
Well, just in general, expand the request to the building permit applications, not because we want to be nosy to every little bathroom that gets put in somebody's house, but certainly commercial and institutional. And because that's where the fight about the towers, people were so upset because, it got published. We got published in the paper of record, which is not, I don't even think it was the Bellingham Herald at the time. It was some other little paper that they used. So certainly nothing we were paying attention of, and we've never been able to track it even since. So it's kind of a sore point, promises provided and then not kept by the county. And then, I just think we need a real human like Allison who could do it. I wish we could pay her to do it. And maybe a little computer technology wouldn't hurt either. But to have somebody that represents the community paying attention.
Well, so I'm not sure how many people got the little email I sent out, because I watched the budget meeting last Thursday and all of a sudden got to be shocked as I tune into the budget meeting to find out that one of the things they were going to cut from the budget was 2 sheriff's officers, one of them being the one from Point Roberts.
Oh, there you go.
And they were going to make us only have 1 sheriff's officer, and another deputy on the other side of the county was going to be cut. Thankfully it ended up being a 4-3 vote to fund those 2 deputies so that we got to keep both of our deputies. Mm-hmm. But, you would think that if they're going to amend the budget And it is going to be such a large item for a small community, which is you're losing one of your sheriff's deputies, that we as a community would have been informed to be able to, they would have notified, you know, the PRCAC to say, hey, we're thinking about reducing your budget and you're going to lose a deputy. You know, the community could have then come together and, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I think Bill wants to say
Yeah,
something.
Bill? Bill?
So Allison, help me with something, okay? Make me smart about this. So they go in and going to cut a budget, and it's a line item for a community like ours. So who is it that would do that, to take the knife to this budget and not maybe pick the phone up or call, or what's the process that would be that somebody'd say, oh, by the way, we're talking about getting rid of one of your police officers. And it's more like you said, you look and you go, oh, wow. Well, what do you mean you're taking one of my guys? And I would think that through the process, if they have such a good process up there for budgeting, they identify the line item and then they'd say, Allison, or they'd say to somebody, hey, listen, we're going to take one of their, we're going to, in a little more vulgar terms, we're going to take 50% of their police officers. So we think we should tell somebody, or should it be like, oh, look what we're going to do on the budget day? And is there a process in place for somebody to call you, Allison, or somebody to say, hey, listen, we got you on the chopping block here?
My understanding is the executive and the deputy executive create the budget based on, you know, because they're really trying to cut the budget right now because of COVID and they're trying to save money. That Sheriff Elfo would have been notified of a line item of, hey, we're going to cut you 2 deputies. Just as other departments would be notified. The county council members get the budget in one big book.
Yeah.
And then they get to start flipping through it. And my understanding is that particular item got called out by Sheriff Elfo to one of the council members of, you know, hey, this isn't a good thing. And then the council had a discussion about where they could cut other funds somewhere else to save those 2 sheriff's deputies' jobs. But, you know.
I understand I understand that. You see what I'm saying, Alice? I understand from a police perspective.
The executive's office would have been the one who would have been the one to inform us, or I guess Sheriff Elfo could have. But
right, but
he's
I'm looking more from the perspective of the sheriff being the guy that's going to be the recipient of the guy that takes the knife is the one that should pick the phone up and call you or somebody. So,
well, yes, I think we're both thinking that it probably,
you know,
in this
that's what
particular
I'm,
example, it makes sense that either the county executive's office, whoever in his office is handling the budget, or the executive himself, or the sheriff, because he's the one who's doesn't want to lose 2 deputies, and one of them is going to be for us.
yeah, clearly.
So, I mean, there are a few people that could have, and that would be the point of time, to go to the executive's office to ask them to proactively, I hate that term, but to actively inform us when they see
the previous
Point Roberts.
Right, but it goes back and what Allison talked about before in the previous point. It goes back to saying, hey, listen, we're going to do something here with sidewalks, or we're going to do something over here with public works and stuff. And they're talking about us sometimes like as if we're in the third person. And I'm like, well, there should be somebody sitting there going, hey, I'm over here. What do you want to do? And it's always, you know, they need to, and if it requires somebody sitting in the office saying, well, what are you doing here? I said, I'm here because you're talking about me. And, you know.
Well, that is your point is the very point that caused
and that's what Alice.
Well, and so basically
because if you're gonna.
What we're doing now is basically I go on the Thursday prior to county council is when their agenda gets posted for all of the different committees as well as council. I then get to go through
Got it.
every single committee and everything and to look to see if I can find something about Point Roberts, which is where I found
Nothing
a
like
couple
making
weeks
your
ago.
job easy, right?
Well,
Right,
but it's the
Allison?
only way we're going to know. Like, I found out today that we're on the agenda for a possible amendment to the PRCAC that was brought up by a council member. That he wants us to be altered. But, you know, we're not controlled by the council, we're controlled by the executive. So,
Right.
you know, it seems a little weird. But that's the only way we can find things out is if we are proactive ourselves and go through all of the agendas and to see if we're on it. That's the only way we can tell.
Does the executive take any responsibility for this part? I mean, making it, yeah, sure, we as a group go and look and say, oh, is our name anywhere? And you do a search. But is there any something, a positive action or a proactive action on the part of the county executive to say, oh, by the way, guys, you're on the agenda.
Well, no, Bill, that was the
Or
point.
we're going to tear up your sidewalks.
Bill, yeah, I think we've got the point. I mean, that was the point of my bringing this topic up. We either need to take the initiative more, or we need to get the county to recognize the importance of taking the initiative more, to contact us. One way that it's easier for them to do it because they know what they're doing, and they can see that the name
Precisely.
that the name Point Roberts shows up, and that's a good time to call Allison or Steve Wolf or whoever, call somebody on this committee at a minimum as a way to get the word here, and then we can start to either ignore it or do something about it. Hopefully do something about it.
I know Jeff Christopher made that request of the county back when he was chair, for all departments to notify the chair of the PRCAC when we were going to be on the agenda. And I think it happened for a little while, and then it just kind of teetered off again.
So Allison, a more, just a general question is, do we need somebody to have a sit down with the executive? Pardon my English when it sounds like I'm from Jersey, but do we need to have somebody have a sit down with this guy and explain to him, how about it?
Well, I think that what we need to do is, I think what Stephen Falk is suggesting is that we basically have Stephen draft a letter to the executive, again, on behalf of the PRCAC, and request, because he wasn't the executive before when we asked the question, and give him the opportunity to please have all of your staff or council members, or even Dana Brown Davis is the clerk of the county. Even have her, if she sees something that says Point Roberts, because she's the one who posts the agenda and puts everything on all of the different agendas for all the council members. I hate to put more work on Dana, but to say, Dana Brown Davis, you see Point Roberts, you need to email this to the PRCAC. That can help us.
The letter's good. That's the start. That's
great. That'll help us as far as council goes, so I don't actually have to constantly always read all the agendas. But as far as like public works projects and stuff, that's going to have to come out of public works themselves, and that's only the executive can do that, because all of the employees work for the executive.
Got it. Okay, well, thanks. I didn't mean to take the discussion too far, but Allison, I will volunteer if you need the letter personally delivered.
You have any cement galoshes?
I don't need anything like that. I have a sit down, give them the letter, say, listen, don't make this happen. Don't make me have to come back up here.
Well, shall we? Do we want to actually formalize the idea of sending this letter? Does it need that type of? We could not.
I make a motion that we send the letter, yada yada. Somebody has to fill in the yada.
The yada yada to the county executive, possibly also to the clerk of county council, to request that they implement a method to keep the PRCAC informed when Point Roberts shows up on their agenda in any form, really.
Well, it would be, we don't just want the agenda for county council
No, I don't
when,
mean, no,
or projects.
I'm not referring to county council. I
Yeah.
mean, on their personal, on whatever they're doing, on
Yeah.
their to-do list.
Yeah,
If Point Roberts shows up on their to-do list at whatever level of government they're in, that they make an effort to let us know, because they're more likely to know it than we are. Anyway, so that we don't, the tail end of that is not part of the motion, but the earlier part would be the motion to send a letter to get this information. Yes.
I vote for that. Call for the vote.
second,
Okay. Well, any further discussion on it? No. Shall we? Okay. Well, I'm in favor.
good. Judson? You good?
Yes, yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So I will draft a letter and send it to, I might just start with the county executive.
Thanks for asking.
Maybe both. We don't want to leave you out, Judson. Well, that is the end of the known agenda. Now we would get to the hidden agenda, but I would rather adjourn.
Yeah, I want to go eat. My wife is glaring at me.
Oh, okay.
Probably eating my dinner right now.
Maybe that'll help make her stop.
I just wanted to bring one thing up to make sure that we have this on either at our special meeting that we're having or on our next agenda. I want to make sure that we close out this year. Although we're not going to be able to affect the current county budget, which is getting done on Tuesday, that we need to start the process to get our, don't want to swear. We need to get everything in order so that we can start the process to move forward in our visioning, our economic development. But we need to have that discussion. I want to, because especially once we approve the bylaws, as far as, we'll have the subcommittee structure in our bylaws and such. I want to hit the ground running to be able to reach out to the community, to those people who have the skill sets we need to get this going, to get this started. We can't wait anymore. And even at that point, this is priority one, but we can also start creating some subgroups, to help work with Maple Beach on their seawall. So that can actually be done and it doesn't keep getting pushed to the bottom, but we need to make this our number one focus. And I just want to make sure that's on either part of our next agenda for the emergency, our special agenda, that we talk about it, or at least the next agenda, because I want to make sure we start getting this, getting this organized. I want to hit the ground running and have time to reach out to the community and find the expertise. We have a lot of people around here that have untapped skills that, we can use, and I think we need to do that because the county's not going to do it for us.
Well, I would suggest we do that at the regular meeting because I wouldn't anticipate anything else for the special meeting other than the forum, assuming that we actually have anyone to quiz.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely for the December meeting, I think it makes sense and get geared up for January in the new year, or February and the full whatever the makeup of the board is, the committee is. But anyway, yeah, but definitely hit the ground running in 2021. Good.
Yeah. I want to thank Tom O'Brien for stepping up and doing everything that he's done.
Well, and that's why I'm really hoping Tom's going to be able to be at the December meeting, because he has a lot of really good, not just information that he's already compiled, but some very good contacts at the, the Port of Bellingham and at the university to be able to use.
Thanks, Tom.
Can we?
I'll make a motion to adjourn so Steve can have his dinner.
Only you. The rest of you have to stay. I get that.
Oh no. No one's going to second that motion?
Second.
Very good. Okay. I will turn off the recording and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.